Mr. Pandaria Remix is just right around the corner. It's coming next month, but it's going to be more like a Seasons of Discovery where you're going to be playing with retail characters, retail classes, and all that kind of stuff mixed in with new abilities, and some people might not like that. What if you want to play Mr. Pandaria as intended with all of the various content that it involves, including the legendary cloak, which will not be in Remix? What if you want to play it Blizz-like? Well, there are several great servers which to choose from. Two of them are Tori and Stormforged. I recently asked my community which one I should try myself. Pretty much everyone told me to play Tori, so I looked into both of them. From what it seems, Tori is ran fairly well. However, two things bothered me. One is that Tori only has a few hundred players on at a time, while Stormforged has a few thousand players on at a time, with a fairly balanced ratio of Horde to Alliance. Beyond that, Tori is soon turning into a Legion server, while Stormforged not only has their older server, but a relatively fresh Mr. Pandaria server, as well as their TBC server. So that is why I chose Stormforged, for the fact that it's not going to change expansions soon, it has way more players, and it's somewhat balanced in terms of PvP. Now, another thing that people have mentioned is that this server happens to be pay to win, so I checked it out, and it's really not that bad. Yeah, there are some issues with the store, such as pretty powerful boosting, experience rates increase. Also, you can boost your professions. Beyond that, it seems that it's mostly for unobtainable colors of mounts, as well as trading card game mounts, pets, toys, Blizzard store mounts, and transmog items. That stuff doesn't really bother me, as it's mostly cosmetic, and most of it is not obtainable in-game to begin with. So yeah, while there is the boosting, I don't really see anything on the store that is egregious. Now then, time to play the server. Installing the server was quick and easy. Of course, it is a Mr. Pandaria server, so it's larger than a 1.12 or 3.3.5 client. But beyond that, just make sure that the realm list is set, you have an account to log in, no extra patches needed, and you just play. Upon making your first character, you will have to level from level 1. You don't just start off in Pandaria, which is typical, but sometimes you have servers that just start you off at the newest content. Now, normally I make a Tauren Hunter with all of my playthroughs on private servers, but this time I decided to mix it up and I made a Tauren Warrior, as I actually did play an Orc Warrior back in actual Mr. Pandaria. Jumping into the world, I was immediately reminded why I hate the Cataclysm world revamp, but I had to keep my eyes on the prize, so I worked my way through the leveling. Now, the server itself is defaulted to a ×3 experience rate, but if you wanted to, you could input a simple command in order to set it to ×1 if you wished for the authentic experience. Now, on the store, you also have the option to purchase even faster leveling boosts. So I went through the Cataclysm revamped leveling zones until about level 20, where I started to mix leveling with quests and looking for a group. The looking for group system is as you would expect. There is a mild amount of retail mentality, where if anything happens that is slightly inconveniencing, people would just leave or kick a player for the dumbest reasons, sometimes for no reason at all. While I did have some hilarious moments, like one time where my queue popped after half an hour of waiting, the tank had forgotten they were not in tank spec, and we all wiped on the first pull because they had pulled the whole room. The tank left, as well as the healer, leaving the rest of us dead and stranded on the floor, now with a 15-minute cooldown before we could even re-queue. It's really such a bullshit system if you ask me. But anyway, I eventually reached level 85, and now it was time to level through Pandaria, which is the main showcase for this server. The introduction cinematic of Garrosh unfortunately did not work, but I continued on. For this, leveling 1 to 85 was half questing and half dungeons. This time, I wished to level purely from the questing and only doing dungeons once I had reached the appropriate time to do so in leveling. I started off by doing the introduction Horde quest in the Jade Forest, slaying the Alliance in the name of the Horde, and claiming this new land. After I took down the Alliance airstrip base, I wanted to go to Taiyan Monastery. I remember the quest there, you had to talk to an NPC in front of that tower in order to start the quest line. Unfortunately, neither of the characters had introduction quests. I thought maybe I needed a lead quest from Dawn's Blossom, so I headed there, but I found absolutely no quests at all other than a lead quest that led to the orchard. So I went to do those quests instead, where I eventually leveled up to level 86. I queued up for the Jade Serpent Temple, where we took out the dungeon in around 10 minutes. The bosses and enemies seemed a lot easier than I remember, but I am only on normal mode, so we'll see how they are later on in max level. Once done with the dungeon, I headed for the farmland, where I saw a level 86 rare just off to the right. I remember from back in the day that the rares were very hard to fight. They were essentially mini-bosses. I went for it anyway, only to be demolished. I quested through the farmland into Kunlai, where I had a couple of PvP encounters with the Alliance. I then did a bit of Townlawn steps. Eventually, I hit level 90, and I had only completed about 4 normal dungeons at this time, but it was time to run more of them, as that is the only way of gaining gear right now until I can do heroics. While I was waiting in the queue lines, I would use this time to do all the many forms of the content at Endgame, such as the farm, rare hunting, going for my legendary cloak, and gaining reputations. I think the Isle of Thunder is also available at this moment. I'm actually not quite sure, but I did see a quest that hinted at leading me there. I skipped it for now, as I want to do everything outside of Isle of Thunder before I move on and play the expansion as it was intended. Now, this is just a first impressions video, so I'm not going to go into the full details of Endgame just yet. I will make a full review once I have completed more of it. But let's continue on with what bugs I saw on the server while leveling and my final thoughts before I give a rating. Some of the bugs I found on the server are as follows. Sometimes the NPCs would walk under the mesh. When going through a loading screen, your mounts default to walking speed sometimes, and other times your action buttons or macros can disappear after the loading screen and will need to be replaced, such as my little blue dragon pet that I found in Winterspring. I continued to try putting it on my bar, and anytime I reloaded or relogged, it would just disappear off my action bar. Patrolling creatures will stand still and don't patrol at all. That's including the whale sharks and other forms of patrolling creatures out in the world. When your character automatically changes targets after you've killed your current target, your ability sometimes won't work as if you were not targeting anything at all. To fix this, I had to untarget and then retarget the enemy. Some questing hubs had a lot of missing quests. The two that I saw in particular would be Grizzly Hills and Taiyan Monastery in Pandaria. Taiyan Monastery, I already explained to you that I didn't see any quests at all, not even the lead quest. Grizzly Hills had the introductory quests. I completed those, but even after completing every single quest available to me in the Conquest Hold, I saw absolutely no more quests available. They were just missing, gone, nothing I could do about it. Sometimes after combat, you would be stuck in the combat state, which made me have to Alt F4 in order to reset it. This happened to me several times while leveling. And the last thing is that getting off of a taxi service that is not a flight path, which happens a lot in the Cataclysm and Pandaria leveling experiences, your camera will not adjust back to the default manually, and you will have to reload your UI. That's pretty much all I saw. There are not really that many bugs on this server, though there were enough to be noticeable and annoying, even enough to slow down my progression at times, which, I had to reload and sometimes restart the client. So my final thoughts. There is, of course, the store. Looking at it, if you're not comfortable with the boosting, then this is not the server for you. But from what I saw, I didn't really see anything like raiding gear, so I just settled for it. The leveling is so fast anyway that the boosting is not really needed. You can reach maximum level from level 1 in about 20 to 30 hours, maybe even less if you really go at it. The server is fairly populated. I saw a lot of people out in the world, even in lower leveling zones, with enough people to fill up the looking for group tool within a few minutes up to about half an hour or so at all level ranges. Of course, depending on the time of day. The cities are full of people, just AFKing and chilling. I did see constant raid groups forming in the world chat. There is world PvP on the server, as I did see a raid on Ogremar while I was leveling. and of course a couple of encounters while in Pandaria. The Black Market Auction House is active in the same location that it was in Mists of Pandaria. The Legendary Cloak Quest is also active. Now, I'm not fully sure on this next point, but the server I am on right now is the second Stormforge server, which only released a few months ago, and I noticed a lot of people with super rare mounts. If I am correct, I believe that the account-wide acquisition of pets and mounts do carry over, as they are, account-bound. And that is why I see a lot of fresh characters on like Ravenlords and Twilight Drakes, even Heavenly Onyx Serpents, as well as other rare mounts. Also, while this server is advertised as an English-speaking server, you will have a ton of Spanish, Portuguese, as well as a few other languages mixed in. Though it was never impossible to find a decent amount of English speakers, it does come into conflict sometimes while you're in groups, as sometimes half or more of the party members will not speak any English at all, which can lead to some complications in terms of communication with your party members. Overall, I think the first impressions I will give this server is a score of 4 out of 5 for the experience I've had so far. This could of course all change by the time I make my full review later on, but for now know that this server is actually quite decent with a healthy population. So I would definitely recommend this server if you are interested in playing a Blizzard-like Mists of Pandaria server. I hope you enjoyed this video. I will soon have a playthrough, part 1 and part 2 of questing through Pandaria on my channel shortly after this video is posted. And then I will post a video of giving a review of the Mists of Pandaria expansion itself, similar to how I just recently reviewed Vanilla WoW, or Classic WoW, or however you want to put it. I also plan on doing a full review once I do all of the, or at least most of the endgame content. I'm not sure about the rating, we'll have to wait and see about that, but at least all of the various reputations, all the Pandaren farm. I'm definitely going to get geared up. I'm going to at least try to do the legendary cloak, all that stuff. I'll do a full review at that time, so make sure you like this video, subscribe if you want to see all those videos on Stormforge, or just Mists of Pandaria in general, and I will see you next time.